At the beginning, we see the Jackal, a world-class assassin, wearing a realistic-looking mask and learning to imitate his latest victim's voice, a janitor who works for the powerful company. The Jackal's real target is a man named Manfred Fest, a far-right German chancellor candidate, but first, he needs to get his plan underway. The Jackal enters the Fest Corporation lobby and makes it past all their security protocols with relative ease. He spots Elias, Manfred's son, talking with his assistant and heads to the office next door to his. There he prepares a pistol with a silencer, swiftly killing the assistant when she walks in on him. The security guard hears the thud and comes to check, but the Jackal shoots him. Jackal opens fire on Elias, purposely missing and causing him to take off running. Jackal goes after him and spots him going down the stairway. He hits Elias in both his feet, dropping him. Elias begs for his life, and the Jackal disappears soon after. He escapes to the roof of the building to see the cops responding. He then throws smoke grenades into the chaotic scene below before rappelling down and disappearing into the night. Jackal returns to his hideout and removes his complex disguise to reveal a youthful face. He then checks the wind speed for the following night before resting up for part 2 of his mission. By the next morning, news of the attack on Elias begins to circulate, and Manfred, who is in his transport, making his way to the hospital. Meanwhile, the Jackal begins to prepare a powerful long-range sniper rifle with a magnetic trigger. It turns out, his hideout is right next to the hospital that Elias is in. He scopes out the surrounding area, then fires one shot to test his scope. After correcting it, his shot placement is right on center. Manfred and his escort pull up to the hospital, which is surrounded by demonstrators who are against him and his party. Jackal waits patiently as the convoy pulls in. The guards are prepared to move Manfred to the door within 10 seconds. Jackal fires the shot as Manfred exits the car, which hits him when he is inside the building, a wicked shot. One guard, using binoculars, spots his sniper glare, and even though he has the chance, Jackal doesn't kill him but immediately packs up his things and leaves an armed bomb behind in the room. The cops speed past him and get to the hotel ready to take him down, but they burst into the room a little too late and are blown to shreds. Jackal also drives his car to an underground parking lot and blows it up. We then meet MI6 weapons expert Bianca Pullman, who sees reports of Manfred's assassination. She gets home to her husband Paul and daughter Jasmine, who is watching an interview with tech billionaire Ole Dag Charles, who is creating a software named River, which will reveal all the secret transactions of other billionaires. They then watch reports of Manfred's assassination, and Bianca takes a keen interest. Bianca pulls up reports of the shooting the next day and is shocked to learn that the shot was over 2 miles away. A meeting is being called about the shooting, and Bianca begs her supervisor Osita to allow her inside, as snipers are her expertise. Her name wasn't on the roster, but Bianca slips into the meeting anyway, where they are being briefed by German intelligence. Bianca interrupts, asking the man to confirm the distance of the shot, which would have broken the world record. The size of a barrel that longed to make such a shot would not have fit in the sniper's bag unless it was a collapsible rifle, one which everyone thinks is impossible to make due to the alignment of the barrel, but Bianca knows of a gunmaker named Norman Stoke who has been working on a collapsible barrel for years. Osita is reluctant to work on such a vague lead, but Bianca is certain she can track him down. After the meeting, Bianca is called to stay behind to speak with Isabel Kirby, a senior MI6 official who wants to know more about Stoke. Bianca explains that Stoke is a longtime gunmaker who made the gun used in the last high-profile assassination. Isabel expects great things from Bianca and asks her not to let them down. Meanwhile, the Jackal arrives in Paris and heads to a cafe where he logs into a dark web browser to collect payment. There, he receives an anonymous offer for a hit, but the client wants to meet in person. Jackal refuses, but when he sees that the offer is 10 million, he breaks his protocol and decides to meet for 1 million. Bianca arrives in Northern Ireland to meet with her contact, nicknamed Sparrow. She meets Sparrow inside a store, who turns out to be a woman named Alison and also Stoke's brother's wife. Alison claims she hasn't seen Stoke in a long time, but Bianca suspects she is lying and demands an answer. Alison then explains she has to work on getting a meeting with Stoke, and Bianca tells her to keep in touch. Jackal receives his payment for the meeting and heads out. He travels to Sweden and waits at a remote location to see his client arrive. His client, a woman named Zena, walks to a cabin nearby, and the Jackal meets her there. He learns that his target is Charles, the tech billionaire. Hearing this, Jackal demands $100 million for such a high-profile hit, and when Xena has to talk it over with her colleagues, Jackal disappears. Bianca hasn't heard from Allison, so she has her team dig up everything they can on her daughter Emma. She goes into a meeting with Isabel and Osita as they discuss the Fest shooting. She explains that Allison is not cooperating, so they plan to target her daughter, who is involved in a radical leftist group. At one of the protests of the leftist group, Bianca spots Emma among the protesters. She has the officers arrest Emma and take her into custody. Bianca controls the interview from another room, accusing Emma of hitting a cop with a bottle. Emma denies this and demands a lawyer, but this is what Bianca was hoping for and tells Emma to call her mother. Emma is then thrown into a cell. Jackal then arrives in Spain at a massive villa. He enters to see a woman, who turns out to be his wife Nuria, who happily greets him. He heads to his office to speak with his client for the Fest hit, who now refuses to pay him. Emma has a heart attack while in custody and has to be rushed to the hospital with a worried Bianca sitting by her side. She suffers another heart attack while inside, and despite everyone's efforts, Emma passes away. Bianca is at home when she gets a call from Allison, who knows that Bianca is behind Emma getting arrested. Bianca denies having any involvement, refusing to explain that Emma has passed away. She tells Isabel to just get her Stokes' phone number and she will take care of the rest. Bianca is called into a meeting with Isabel and Osita about Emma's passing. They are then joined by a man, Mr. Carver, who Isabel explains cleans up the agency's messes. Carver wants to ensure that MI6 cannot be linked in any way to Emma's death. The only person who knows her name is the cop she used to interview Emma. Osita wants to shut down the operation, calling Bianca's lead a wild goose chase, but Bianca explains that catching the person behind a major political figure's assassination far outweighs Emma's passing. Isabel sides with Bianca, and Carver notes he can help with keeping Emma's death under wraps for 24 hours. Bianca reaches out to Sparrow, lying that her bosses have agreed to release Emma if they can get Stokes' number. Jackal is at home with his wife Nuria and their son Carlito. He goes to his office alone to research Charles and sees reports of how River would change the financial landscape. He logs into the dark web where the previous client has outright refused to pay for the Fest assassination. Nuria comes to him and he quickly logs off. She can see that he is in deep thought, and Jackal explains that a client of his has refused to meet their obligations and he must take care of it. He also tells her about a large potential deal which could spend more time with her and their son. We then see Xena meeting with her employer, Timothy Winthorpe, a powerful businessman, who wants assurance that Jackal can complete the hit. They watch another interview of Charles on TV explaining what River can do, but Timothy shuts the TV off, adamant that Charles needs to die before River is released. Allison is at home with her husband Larry. She is worried about Emma and wants to visit her in England, but Larry reminds her they don't have that much money. Allison then suggests that Larry reach out to Stoke to ask him for money, but Larry is hesitant to reach out to his brother as it could get him in trouble, but Allison claims she is out of options. Jackal is hosting a birthday party for Carlito with Nuria's family in attendance. During the party, Jackal receives a message to log into his bank account. He was able to get a location on the client who made the deposit but refused to pay. Jackal returns to the party with his things packed, and Nuria is very disappointed. He says his goodbye to everyone and is headed out to wait for his cab, but Nuria insists on driving him. Meanwhile, Bianca is going over footage captured of Jackal in disguise and noting every single detail about him. Nuria drops Jackal off at the airport, but once she drives away, Jackal jumps in a cab and heads to his bank vault, where he has loads of cash and fake documents to travel. He exits the bank and gets back in his cab. Meanwhile, Nuria buys herself flowers when she is shocked to see Jackal pass her in a cab. She calls him, but it goes to voicemail. She returns home where she explains what she saw to her mother, who immediately assumes that Charles is having an affair and scolds Nuria for being too trusting. Nuria doesn't want to believe this and just wants to fix what is happening. Allison soon learns that Larry has reached out to Stoke and is waiting for his reply. Bianca goes to report her findings to Isabel and Osita. She thinks their assassin is British and even former military based on his skills. Also, She has discovered that the backpack he carried is only sold in Britain and does not ship internationally. Bianca notes that she needs more time with Allison, but Isabel cannot afford her more time and urges her to get Allison to talk by tomorrow. Jackal arrives in Germany when he gets a call from Xena about her employer's acceptance of the deal, but he is demanding to meet in person based on the size of the payment. Jackal agrees, but wants them to come to him. Allison and Larry are inside a bar. She gets him to leave their table to get them drinks and uses the chance to snap photos of Stokes' number before Larry returns. Bianca gets home where Jasmine is preparing dinner as Paul's two sons are joining them for dinner. The boys come over and dinner gets underway, but Bianca soon receives an alert. It is the photo of Stokes' number. Bianca gets dressed and says goodbye to a disappointed Paul and Jasmine before leaving. She arrives in Latvia to track down Stoke. She meets up with MI6 agent Spencer, who will aid her in her mission. Xena is in a restaurant when she receives instructions on where to meet Jackal. She exits, unaware that Jackal is following her closely, wearing a disguise. She takes a seat on a park bench and Jackal joins her. Xena and her employer still want to negotiate the price. Jackal sticks to his fee, as they just pay him to kill, he has to worry about getting away with it. Xena then offers to pay a starting fee of $20 million and wants the hit done in a few weeks before River's release. Jackal doesn't like to be hurried, but once the payment lands, he plans to get to work. He heads over to the bank of his previous client and learns that the deposit came from a company named Hellalini. Jackal begins to look into the company, which leads back to a trust. Bianca and her team are closing in on Stokes' location. They park a distance off and close in on the cabin with their guns ready. They get to the door and Bianca calls out for Stoke to surrender, unaware that bombs are planted at the entrances. Bianca and her man make it safe, but their third agent is hit by a bomb. Stoke then rips the second agent to shreds with bullets. Bianca still pushes forward, letting off shots at an escaping Stoke. The two get into a running gun battle, but Stoke manages to escape under heavy gunfire. She then calls for an extraction before spotting a suitcase Stoke dropped. Jackal manages to find pictures of the man in charge of the trust, and after going through photos, he realizes that man is a close business partner of Elias Fest, which means Elias was the one who ordered the hit on his own father. Bianca returns to her headquarters where she is scolded by Osita, who thinks that she needs to be shut down. Bianca then reveals the suitcase she recovered from Stoke, which turns out to be bits and pieces of a rifle, which she fits together, explaining that that's how their sniper hit his rifle. Osita and Isabel are impressed and keep Bianca on the mission. She then leaves a message on Allison's cell phone, as news has broken about Emma's death, and she apologizes and offers to talk. In Spain, Nuria's mother tries convincing her that Jackal's constant traveling isn't normal. She refuses to listen and decides to call her husband directly. She reveals that she saw him pass her in a taxi. He tries to convince her that it wasn't him that she saw. Nuria is certain of it and demands that Jackal go to video chat and show her around the room. Nuria isn't convinced but accepts this for now. She wants to come to Amsterdam, but Jackal gives her another excuse. She is worried that Jackal is living a double life and tells him this life they live isn't normal. Nuria goes to his office and begins to look around for any evidence of Jackal cheating. She goes into his closet, where she stumbles upon a safe hidden in the floor. Allison and Larry arrive in England to identify Emma, but Larry is too depressed about his loss and sends her off alone. Allison leaves the building and Bianca is on her trail. The two meet in a park and Bianca apologizes for her loss. Bianca still denies having involvement in Emma's imprisonment. Despite Allison's grief, Bianca demands Stokes' whereabouts, threatening her and Larry with imprisonment for aiding a fugitive who killed two MI6 agents. Allison isn't scared and storms away. Meanwhile, Larry receives a call from Stoke. When Allison returns home, she can see that something is wrong. Larry is suspicious of Allison's determination to call his brother now, knowing what happened to him. He demands Allison's phone and breaks down when he sees that she betrayed him. Allison tries to run but is dragged back into the apartment. Carver begins to investigate the Stoke operation leak, trying to uncover how he was tipped off and begins interviewing agents, including Bianca. Nuria alerts her mom and Alberto to the hidden safe in the floor but are unable to guess the code to get in. Alberto then suggests that they find the receipt for the safe and get a new code from the manufacturer. Bianca is summoned to secretly meet with Osita about the leak. Only two other people who knew about the operation were Bianca's co-worker Damien and Isabel. They are not sure who, so Osita warns her to keep her circle tight. That night, Nuria and her mother are going over the plans of the house when she sees a hidden room in the walls, and inside the closet, they find a large hidden wall safe. That night, Jackal receives his commencement fee from Xena. He heads to a parking lot that night and ambushes Elias Driver, closely dressed like the man, then kills him to take his place. Bianca receives results from hacking into Stokes' cell phone and learns he spoke with a person called Jackal leading up to Fest's shooting. At the funeral service for Manfred Fest, Elias is heading back to his car, surrounded by bodyguards and armed policemen. He heads out in a convoy of other vehicles when suddenly his driver shoots the guard and speeds away. It is Jackal, who is now involved in a high-speed chase to get away from the chasing guards. After some skillful driving, Jackal manages to get away. When Elias recognizes him, he confesses that he was just angry because Jackal shot him. He wants to pay any amount now to spare his life, but Jackal tells him it's about the principle before shooting him dead. Jackal sets a bomb inside the car and disappears, which blows up as soon as the backup agents arrive. In the end, Bianca receives a message from Allison about meeting up. Nuria and her mom watch as Alberto breaks into the vault and finally get it open. The room turns out to be where Jackal creates his disguises, stores his cash, and weapons. All this time, Jackal is watching them on his security cameras. Bianca is called into a meeting with German intelligence about the death of Elias. They uncovered that Elias ordered the hit on his own father and was killed by the assassin when he failed to pay, but nobody got a good look at the man, leaving Bianca frustrated. Jackal is driving when he spots a bird. He stares at it and ends up running into the back of a delivery truck. Jackal offers to pay for the damages and even pay the man's salary for a month, but the driver refuses and flags down a cop to file a report. The cop demands Jackal's documentation, then demands to see inside his trunk. Inside the trunk is a bag, and the cop insists on searching it. Inside, he spots a gun with cash, but Jackal swiftly shoots him, throws his gun to the driver, then shoots the driver dead with the cop's gun. He quickly stages the scene before speeding away. Otis calls Bianca into a meeting about chatter intercepted about Jackal going after another target, but they cannot decode who the target is. Nuria, Alberto, and their mother are considering calling the cops, but Alberto refuses to call the cops on Jackal. Jackal calls Nuria, inviting her to join him in Paris as there is a lot he needs to talk to her about. She agrees, but fails to return his "I love you." Bianca tracks down a sniper who once served in the military. He is impressed with their target shot but thinks he had a bit of luck on his side. He also suspects that Jackal is British Army, but he has never heard of anyone shooting over 2 miles. The man runs a WhatsApp group of more snipers, but when Bianca wants details on the members, he refuses to help any further. Before Bianca leaves, the man recalls one other legendary sniper after his time named Alexander Duggan, but he was confirmed dead over 10 years ago. Bianca still calls Damien and has him run a check on this Alexander Duggan. Nuria arrives at Jackal's hotel. He confesses that he has been lying to Nuria from the start and will tell her the truth. He explains that he is employed by large companies to do industrial espionage, where he uses fake identities, buys people off, and sometimes does illegal stuff. He thinks this will appease Nuria, but she becomes angry that he is putting her and their son's life at risk. Jackal convinces her that they are not in danger, and once he completes his last job, then they can all be together. Nuria makes him promise, and Jackal promises to never lie to her again. We then see Larry speaking to Allison about their past, but it turns out that Allison is dead on the bed beside him. He then uses her phone to ask Bianca to meet that night. Bianca turns up to the meeting spot where she is ambushed and attacked by Larry. She manages to escape and reach out to the MI6 emergency line, who then put her in contact with Agent Vince, a longtime friend who is nearby. Bianca plans to lead Larry into an ambush and take him in, but Larry stops chasing her and disappears. Bianca spots him leaving and goes to confront him. Larry attacks her, but Bianca fights him off until Vince arrives with backup. Despite this, Larry manages to escape using a passing barge to cross the river. Bianca and Vince turn up to Larry's apartment, where they find Allison dead. Bianca has no new updates for Isabel, who reminds her of the mess that they are trying to get resolved and urges her to get her results. Bianca then suggests that Vince be reassigned to her operation as she can trust him, and Isabel agrees, but tells Bianca to give her regular updates on every detail. Charles is finishing up a swim at his island. He is informed by his security about the contract taken out on his life, but Charles has already expected this to happen. His security suggests that he doesn't attend his river launch, but Charles and his assistant think it's too monumental to call off. Charles travels to Estonia to where the river launch will be held to scope out the building and its security procedures. There is a concert being held inside the venue, and Jackal sees a high point way above the stage. He heads up there and confirms it is a good vantage point for his shot, but at that moment, the entire section begins to open, causing Jackal to lose his footing, barely grabbing a wire to stop falling to his death. Fortunately, the area begins to close and he is able to climb back to safety. Turns out Jackal has lost his cell phone, but one of the employees offers to help him find it. The employee rings his cell phone and he recovers it. Bianca returns home, calling for Jasmine, but is shocked to see Larry holding a knife to her. Bianca swiftly shoots Larry in the leg, dropping him. She demands Stokes' whereabouts, but Larry refuses to talk. Bianca is about to kill him, but Jasmine stops her. Jackal returns to his apartment only to see Xena standing there, and he glares at her. Jackal does not harm Xena, who nervously explains that her employers are very powerful and insist on him sticking to the script and not going rogue like he did for Elias. Jackal doesn't harm her and decides to go along with the plan. The two travel by boat to the city of Tallinn, where Xena offers to help him with anything he needs. Jackal then sees a woman wearing a prosthetic walking aid and gets an idea. Bianca meets up with Vince at the hospital where Larry is being held. As they clear the room, Bianca begins to suffocate Larry with his pillow. She demands to know where his brother is, or they will hunt him down and kill him. She offers to spare Stokes' life and just put them in prison for 5 years max if he talks. Larry still refuses, so Bianca resumes his torture. Jackal reaches out to Stoke, wanting to commission him to build him a rifle. Jackal asks him about his incident recently, but Stoke explains that he just had some unexpected guests, which he took care of. Jackal wants to ensure he is secure, as he hates to take any risks, but Stoke reassures him that all is well. His only problem is that he got hit during his incident and is unable to make the deadline without help. Hearing this, Jackal offers to help him. Larry finally gives up Stoke's location in Budapest, giving as much detail about the location as he can but cannot recall much. He also adds that Stoke was the one who gave up Bianca's location, as he knows someone in MI6. Bianca and Vince head back to MI6 to try and locate Stoke's hideout from the details. Bianca also figures out that Jackal's next target is Charles. She and Vince tell Osita about this. He asks about Stoke's location, and Bianca is hesitant to tell, but Osita tells her she will need authorization and logistic support, and he is the only one that can do so under the table. Bianca gives up the location, and Osita plans to have a team ready for her. Jackal arrives in Budapest and is picked up by Stoke, who notes that Jackal is skinnier than he imagined. Bianca goes to look for Paul and Jasmine, who are now staying with his ex-wife after the incident, and she almost gets into an argument with Paul's ex-wife. Paul thinks Bianca's work has gotten the best of her, and she is not making time for her family. She reminds him that in her line of work, people die if she is not where she is supposed to be. Paul still thinks it's too much for him and Jasmine and tells Bianca he doesn't recognize her anymore. Jackal and Stoke arrive back at his compound. Jackal sees his array of weapons, but a military sniper rifle gives him flashbacks. Jackal explains that he wants an entirely plastic rifle with a removable trigger, all of which should fit inside a prosthetic walking aid. Meanwhile, Nuria wants Alberto to fix the safe and hide any evidence of her being inside, unaware Jackal is watching them at that very moment. After a few hours, Jackal and Stoke are underway printing their plastic rifle. They take a break and sit for a talk, and the two seem to get along well. Jackal asks him about his trip to Belarus, where he was attacked, and Stoke tries to play it off, but Jackal demands an answer. Stoke explains he was attacked by a black English woman carrying a Glock 17, and based on that, Jackal knows it was an MI6 snatch squad and wonders how he escaped. Stoke tells him about the help he got from an unknown number telling him to clear out. Jackal lets him know that something will happen to him if he fails to stay low. Bianca gets Stokes' location and sets out immediately. Jackal and Stoke have completed the disguised rifle and they go over assembling the components. Jackal wants to test it out, so Stoke gives him his car keys and directions. Jackal follows Stokes' directions to a wooded area. He hangs a watermelon on a tree, and a good distance away, he uses a rope to help stabilize his rifle. He fires a few shots to adjust his scope, then a special round, which blows the watermelon up. Meanwhile, Bianca and Vince arrive in Budapest and meet up with their team to grab Stoke. Jackal is heading back to Stoke when he gets a call from Nuria, who pretends that all is well. As they talk, Jackal ends up right behind Bianca's car. He sees them slow down at Stoke's gate and parks a distance away, keeping an eye on them. Bianca and the team ready themselves and cut the power to the town. Jackal then reaches out to Stoke, warning him of the incoming team and telling him to clean up and leave. Stoke tries his best to delete what he can before grabbing a gun. He hears them approaching the house and unloads on them, but Bianca and the team push the room and eventually capture Stoke. They tie him up and demand information on who the Jackal is, but Stoke refuses to talk. Bianca searches a bag nearby and realizes that the Jackal was actually there. She suspects that he will be back and has her team on the lookout. While they wait, Bianca wants to know who the mole is, but Stoke refuses to say. She reveals that she tortured Larry to get his location and plans to lock them both up forever. Stoke angrily stands but is suddenly shot in the head by Jackal. Bianca's team manages to locate his position and push on him, but Jackal jumps on a horse and takes off. Bianca and Vince give chase in a car, letting off shots. Jackal turns into a forest, but is hit from his horse. Bianca and the team stop just outside the forest line. They try to push, but Jackal hits an agent on her vest as a warning. Bianca almost ambushes him, but Jackal takes off running with her hot on his trail, frustrated that she cannot hit him. Jackal then jumps over a cliff and into a river, and Bianca unloads a clip trying to hit him. After a few minutes, Jackal emerges from the river, trembling cold. He makes his way to a seemingly abandoned barn to shelter and rest, but as he sleeps, he is knocked out by the owner and bound. The next morning, the owner, Attila, comes to Jackal, berating him in Hungarian for invading his property. Jackal responds in English and German, but Attila doesn't understand. Attila decides to free him. As Jackal leaves, Attila spots his rifle. Attila holds him at gunpoint and leads him to his cabin. Attila then calls his brother Gabi, telling him about the foreigner with a rifle he caught in his barn. Gabi calls his farmhand Laszlo, who speaks English, to talk to Jackal. Jackal offers to pay everyone in exchange for his freedom. Gabi agrees and grabs his rifle, and they head out. They then run into some cops who tell them about a shooting last night and that a foreigner was involved. Meanwhile, Attila offers Jackal some food, but he refuses. Attila cannot accept his refusal, tries forcing Jackal to eat, but Jackal knocks him out. Jackal packs his things, leaving a dead Attila inside. He tries leaving in Attila's car, but the thing won't start. He tries another car, but just then, Gabi and Laszlo pull up. He watches as they enter the house and discover Attila. Jackal tries starting the car but ends up crashing when Gabi starts shooting at him. Gabi approaches the car, but Jackal has vanished. Jackal shoots Gabi from under the car before ending him. Laszlo, seeing he stands no chance, just surrenders and hands over his keys to Jackal, who takes him hostage. MI6 agents are now swarming Stoke's building, collecting evidence. Bianca secretly grabs a jacket from the scene before she is alerted to the bodies found on the farm. Jackal has Laszlo drive him. He takes Laszlo's cell phone and calls Nuria. He fakes emotions and tells her he is in very big trouble and might not make it back home alive. Nuria demands to know where Charles is, and learning he is in Hungary, she wants to know what she can do to help. Jackal tells her he needs one thing, and starts telling her about the secret room in his house, but Nuria confirms she knows about it already. Turns out Nuria and her mother were at a divorce office on her mother's suggestion, but Nuria tells them they have to leave. Bianca and Vince arrive at the farmhouse to see the two bodies. She learns that prints were lifted from the scene and checks will be made. She gets a call from Osita telling her to head back to London by Isabel's orders to run a task force to take down the Jackal. Bianca refuses, as the Jackal is where she is, but Osita is adamant and hangs up. News begins to break about an armed man named the Jackal who the police are hunting for. Jackal tells Laszlo he wished he hadn't shown up to the farm. Tearfully, Laszlo tells Jackal he has the face of a good man, which triggers a flashback. Jackal tells him to pull over, and Laszlo breaks down crying, begging for his life. Jackal refuses to kill Laszlo, telling him if he talks to the cops, his colleagues will find his family and kill them. Laszlo refuses to talk, and Jackal disappears. Jackal makes his way to a cafe and starts a conversation with Zina, who knows he is in Hungary and tells him the client is worried, but Jackal promises to deliver. He gets an email from Nuria, who has landed, and gives her a hotel to meet up at. Nuria soon arrives at his hotel, bringing a disguise. He explains that there are bad people looking for him and he needs to leave. She wants to see him prepare his disguise, and Jackal indulges her and transforms himself in front of her. Jackal arrives at the airport disguised as an old man in a wheelchair. At that moment, Bianca and Vince are also at the airport, and Jackal sees them as he passes. Bianca and Vince get a call from Osita, diverting them to Tallinn, Estonia, as Charles will be there to announce River in 4 days. Jackal is on his plane when Bianca and Vince enter, both agents taking a seat in front of him. All three land in Tallinn, and Jackal watches as the agents board their car. Jackal arrives at his apartment, where he removes his disguise. There is a knock at the door, and it's 2 cops who are investigating a burglary a floor above. They ask to see his ID, but the female cop is more persistent and asks him for a contact number to keep in touch, ringing it to be sure. When they leave, Jackal contacts the employee at the theater who helped him find his phone, named Rasmus, asking him to meet for a drink. The two meet up at a bar. Jackal introduces himself as Peter, an engineer just here for work. After chatting it up, Jackal and Rasmus go back to his apartment, where they spend the night together. Jackal meets with Zina early the next morning. He tells her about Bianca and Vince and wants Zina's people to handle them. She hopes to work with him, but Jackal doesn't plan to contact her again until after it's done. Bianca and Vince arrive at the MI6 office set up by Osita. Bianca and Vince then work to create a likeness of the Jackal from their brief encounter and begin to send it out. Charles is notified about the assassin's arrival in Hungary and again urges him to cancel the launch, but Charles and his assistant want to uphold his image. Nuria is at home when her mom and Alberto come asking how she is. Alberto and their mom are asking Nuria for 40 grand of Jackal's money to buy a bar. Nuria concedes and allows Alberto to enter the safe, but while Nuria and their mom talk, Alberto steals more than 40 grand and also Jackal's gun, unaware that Jackal is watching him on cameras. Nuria then closes the vault without checking. Jackal convinces Rasmus to bring him to the theater that night under the guise of admiring the architecture. Rasmus hands over his keys and Jackal goes to inspect the area. Bianca and the agents learn that a female cop recognizes the drawing. Bianca and Vince step outside for transport, but just then a hit squad opens fire on the two. The agents return fire, causing the car to crash. Bianca and Vince now realize there is a hit out on them, but she insists on pushing on. The two and a SWAT team arrive at the apartment building where Jackal was seen but find it empty. Jackal returns to Rasmus' apartment to collect his things, and the two say their goodbyes. It turns out that it was Anthony, Zina's employer, who hired the hit team and is angry they botched it. Jackal arrives at the theater for a concert and gets through security with his prosthetic walking aid. He then purchases lots of water and snacks before sitting through the concert. Once it's through, Jackal heads back to the spot he scoped out before and crawls to a crawl space just above the stage. There he prepares his rifle and spends the night sleeping. He has another flashback, and we see that the Jackal was indeed a soldier. He also recalls the first time he met Zuria and the smile she gave him. Bianca and Vince arrive at the theater and meet with Charles' head of security, Keith, and hand him the drawing of Jackal. Keith plans to lock down the entire building and has his men scope out the entire building. Bianca hands Keith a jacket belonging to the Jackal for his dogs to track. Jackal sees them enter and talk. Keith brings Bianca and Vince to the stage where Charles will give his speech, and she begins to look around. The next day is the event, and Jackal prepares himself. Keith orders one last sweep of the building. Bianca gets up to the area where Jackal is hiding but walks right over his hiding spot. All the invitees soon arrive and take their seat, and Charles prepares himself. As the event gets underway, Charles comes out from his hiding spot. There is a guard close by, and Jackal silently kills him. He also kills another man with a sharpened credit card and takes his place. Charles is introduced and rises from the stage below. He begins to give his speech, and Jackal is simply waiting for him to move from behind his bulletproof barrier. Just as Jackal gets a shot, a man rushes the stage with a gun, causing him to miss, and the agents rush away with Charles. Jackal blends into the crowd rushing from the theater and disappears into the street. Rasmus, who was outside, sees Jackal walking away and calls after him. Jackal tries to ignore him, but when Rasmus catches up, Jackal brutally kills him and leaves him on the side of the street.